What's up, guys? Coach Brad Wilson here, and in today's video we're gonna dive in, analyze some high stakes cash game action, watch villains, try to find some live tells, and then talk about what they mean. Now obviously you're probably not playing in the stakes that the players are playing in that we're analyzing. However, that's actually a good thing, because if villains are giving off these live tells playing for hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, then most likely they're going to be giving them off left and right, giving them away like candy in whatever game you're playing in. So, got to keep your head on a swivel and pay close attention. With that being said, let's jump into our first physical tell. So this hand starts out innocently enough. Mr. Wu opts to open to 6 million from the hijack. Andrew Roble goes ahead and puts in a 3-bet, and then Rob Young cold calls 20 million from the small blind. Mr. Wu folds, and then we're heading to a flop. Andrew Roble is keeping in mind here that flatting a 3-bet cold with the action still open, typically indicative of a hand like jacks, 10s, 9s, ace, queen, hands that are not good enough to 4-bet, but also not bad enough to fold. Those are the hands that typically go into a 3-bet flatting range from the small blind. Now, let's go to a flop. So we get a pretty interesting flop. Jack deuce 3 with 2 hearts, giving Andrew Roble a flush draw. Rob Young still has his pair of 10s, and Rob Young checks. Andrew Roble goes ahead and makes a 2/3 continuation bet, which is perfectly reasonable, and Rob Young snap calls, and then we head to the turn. All right, so now we're on the turn. There's about 100,000 US doll hairs in the pot. The turn's the queen of clubs. Rob Young checks, which is very much expected, and now Andrew Roble is at a decision point. Rob Young has about 400,000 US dollars behind. There's 100,000 in the pot. He can opt to bet, or he can check back to hope to realize his equity. If he's going to bet, I would assume that he bets around 68 to 70,000. I would actually like to see him bet here on the turn. Given Rob Young's pre-flop flat of the 3-bet, he's going to have a lot of hands like 10s through 8s in his range. If he flopped a set of jacks, most of the time, or some percentage of the time, he's going to opt to check raise the flop. Maybe he peels with a hand like ace queen. Either way, Andrew Roble opts to play it safe, try to realize his equity, and checks back on the turn. And then we're going to head to the river, where we get our physical tell. So the river breaks off a 6 of clubs, and Rob Young once again checks with his pocket 10s. The action's on Andrew Roble, and Andrew asks him if he's going to try to bluff him again. And then the camera zooms right in on Rob Young's face, and Rob Young does a little smile. And if you look at the corners of his eyes, there's no crow's feet. It's not a genuine smile. And in my experience playing poker, that smile means villain is uncomfortable. They're trying to convey that they're comfortable, they're secure in the moment, which means he's not secure in the moment. He's not comfortable. He's got a fairly marginal hand, and he doesn't want to face a bet on the river. He just wants it to go check so that he can realize showdown for free. My guess is Andrew Roble picked up on this. He opted to bet about 60,000 USD on the river. Rob Young, unfortunately, despite giving off his tell of weakness, still ends up making the call. I can't fault Andrew Roble. That's a really great read on his part, a world-class read. It just didn't happen to work out in this situation. So just keep in mind that moving forward, just because you pick up a physical tell on somebody, that means weakness, doesn't necessarily mean that they will fold to your bet. You still have to use your judgment in discerning what their threshold is for calling versus folding. Now in hand number 2, this hand's going to feature a YouTuber who you may or may not have heard of, one by the name of Doug Polk. Villain in the hand is a character named Avi Friedman, and the hand starts out with Avi raising from the hijack with the queen 10 of hearts to 600. Doug defends coming out of the big blind with queen jack offsuit. There's 1300 in the pot, and we go to a flop. We get a flop that Avi thinks he likes, but he doesn't really like it at all. Doug has the nuts, he checks. Avi decides to c-bet 1000 into 1300. Don't really love the sizing. If you're gonna get called when you use that sizing, you're gonna get called by better hands. So it doesn't really accomplish very much. He could bet very small. He could start out by betting about 1/3 pot, or he could check. I think those are really the two viable options. And with that said, he does bet $1,000, and Doug goes ahead and check raises him to 3,300. This is clearly easy check raise by Doug. Once Avi uses that sizing, he's got to think that Avi has something that is going to call a check raise. So let's bump the pot while we have the nuts, and Avi opts to call, and we head to the turn where we're going to get our physical tell. So heading into the turn, there's 7,900 in the pot, and the turn is a 3 of hearts, an insignificant brick. And now watch as Doug is thinking about how much he's going to bet. Watch Friedman. Friedman grabs his chips in a very threatening manner, and this is very classic physical tell. That villain is trying to convey, oh, I'm super strong. You better not bet, because I'm going to call anything that you bet, right? That always means weakness. It doesn't necessarily mean, as we learned in hand number 1, that Friedman's going to fold. It just gives us a good idea of the type of hands that he's likely holding. They're not going to be super strong. He's not going to have 2 pair. He's not going to have a set. He's going to have a lot of 1 pair type hands that aren't going to hold up to a ton of aggression. So this is going to affect Doug's sizing moving forward. Doug actually makes close to a pot size bet here on the turn, and Friedman still calls despite conveying all of his weakness that he doesn't have a super strong hand. He still calls the turn bet, but heading into the river, Doug, being super observant, world-class player, size down, Doug. Get max value because of the physical tell that you got on the turn. And now let's see what Doug does. So clearly, Doug misses the memo here. He bets 1.5x on the river to try to get value out of Friedman's hand. That is marginal based on the physical tell on the turn. Friedman clearly folds. This just goes to show you that when you're playing cards at the poker table, physical tells, they disappear at the drop of a hat. You have to be paying close attention to what your villain is doing in the hand, and if you miss it, it's gone. You can't get it back. The action at the table, the flop, the bet sizes, the stack sizes, all of these things, they're not going to change. They're information that is readily available to you whenever you need it. But players' reaction to flops, players' reaction to you betting, players' reaction to turns, that's something that is temporary, it's transitory, it disappears. Pay close attention. Even if you're a world-class player, I'm sure that I have missed many tells in my life, but even still, pay close attention. All right, so in hand number 3, the final hand in this video on physical tells, the action starts with Romain raising to 6M with the king of clubs, jack of clubs. Tom Dwan calls with the king of diamonds, 7 of diamonds. JRB calls with king jack offsuit, and then Bobby the owl Baldwin calls with the ace of clubs, queen of clubs from the small blind. We take a flop 4 ways. There's about 23k USD in the pot. We get a pretty great flop for action. The Queen of Diamonds, 10 of clubs, 7 of clubs. Bobby Baldwin has top pair with a nut flush draw. Romaine has an open end straight draw and a flush draw. JRB has an open ender. And Tom Dwan's got middle pair with some backdoor possibilities. Bobby Baldwin decides to lead out 10,000 into 23,000. I don't really mind this lead so much. I actually don't mind a check. There's not going to be many free cards you can give that are too awful for your ace of clubs, queen of clubs. A king is going to be pretty bad card. But other than that, there's not a lot of super bad cards. So you can go for a check raise. For value, you can opt to lead out. Don't mind. I think he could have let out a little bigger, maybe 60% of the pot. But either way, he bets 10,000. Everybody calls him. And now we head to the turn. The turn brings an inconsequential deuce ball, and now Bobby Baldwin once again fires out close to a pot size bet, about 60K, and JRB gets out of the way, and Tom Dwan gets out of the way. Romaine is his only caller, and now here in Romaine's spot, he's got to be thinking that Bobby Baldwin is pretty strong. He led 4 ways on the flop, got called in every direction, and now he's betting pot on the turn, and it's still 4 ways. He's got to be thinking Bobby Baldwin has a hand like Queen 10, top 2 pair, maybe a set. At a minimum, Ace Queen, although Ace Queen by itself is a little suspect. The fact that he has clubs makes a lot more sense. I'm not sure that he bets full pot here with regular Ace Queen, and I'm actually not sure that he bets 10K on the flop with regular Ace Queen either. Seeing that there are clubs out there, he's going to want to bet so that he can price out some of the flush draws and straight draws. As it is with the Ace of Clubs, Queen of Clubs, he doesn't really care. He doesn't want to price out flush draws because he wants flush draws to get there when he has the nut flush, so that Bobby Baldwin can build a little fortress with turrets and rule the world pretty much. So let's head to the river, and this is where we get our physical tell. Now on the river, the World Series of Poker champion Bobby Baldwin reverse trips. And now I want you to watch while Bobby's deciding whether to bet for value or check to induce a bluff. He looks straight down at his chips. And this is straight from Mike Caro's Book of Tells. It's one of the most consistent tells out there as a sign of strength. And I believe that once he looks down, he kind of realizes what he's doing. He looks up very quickly, hoping that nobody noticed. And then he opts to check to try to induce a bluff from Romaine. And Romaine, whether he caught that physical tell or not, there was a lot of information that should have told him that Bobby Baldwin had a pretty strong hand at this point. He checks back, does not opt to bluff in the $200,000 pot, and Bobby Baldwin takes it down. And remember, this is Coach Brad Wilson. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and also head to enhanceyouredge.com. Jump on my email newsletter. It'll be the best poker move you've made all year.